So I had a viewer request for techniques to counter knife counters, to counter knife disarm attempts. I will discuss this in the actual module itself, but I just want to preface this by saying I'm not a huge advocate of micromotor tactics, attacking the wrist or attempting disarms. I far prefer to attack the wholeness of the human rather than the weapon, put the wielder down, and then from the trunk move to the limb, and then possibly move to the hand or the disarm. I'd rather end the person, stop the person from functioning, than try to just take off the knife. Because you take the knife off, it's a huge preoccupation, it's very, very mobile, it's very dangerous, it's a fixation that blinds you with your tunnel vision to all the rest of the person and the other persons that may be in the environment, and ultimately, even if you do get the knife off, he might have a backup weapon, he certainly has his hands and his feet, and he is not finished. So I far rather focus on the human than do fine motor technique and small joint manipulation. That being said, we should still have a good understanding of their strengths and their limitations, lest we face them. Second thing I would like to emphasize is that a lot of the work we're going to be doing, I'm going to be demoing it with a small trainer, which more closely emulates the average length of a folder that you might be carrying. So that's the reason I'm using a smaller one. By all means, the tactics would work exactly the same if it was a larger weapon. In a lot of cases, when you're the wielder, it's much, much easier. Third point I'd like to mention is that all of this is facilitated if you use a weapon that has a retention ring. So as it's widely known, I'm a huge fan of karambits. Sometimes I'll be demoing with trainers of that length, which most closely emulates what I would typically carry in a folder, Tactical 511 or an Emerson Wave, which is a nice small length folding blade, and with that retention ring, it makes most of what we're teaching here moot with regards to hand switches and body motion, but the fundamental wave principles you'll see will apply just the same. And if you're not a fan of curved blades, another good option is there's a number of push daggers that do have retention rings. This one is the SOCP, Special Operation Command Program push dagger, and the basic idea here, here's the trainer and here's the blade. The idea with this is that it removes with that ring. It's only sharp at the tip, so it's meant for making space with quick stabs, but again, because of that retention ring, it's very, very hard for people to effectively get disarms, and it gives you a lot of close quarter superiority. So a few things to consider. Ultimately, what's most important is that you recognize we are teaching this to better educate you as a would-be attacker so that you can in turn improve your defensive capacities against the knife. We're in no way advocating offensive use of the knife, but some degree of offensive capacity is required in order for you to be effective in your defensive capacities. So enjoy the work. We're going to work on hand fighting. On va travailler sur les combats avec les mains, just to see how we're able to free our hands from locks. Alors c'est juste des mouvements pour libérer les mains quand vous êtes dans les prises. And we're going to work as if we have a knife. Alors ce soir, ça va être couteau offensif. Comme si tu as un couteau, il y a quelqu'un qui veut faire des prises sur toi. And it's not necessarily because we want to make you better knife attackers, parce que la majorité de personnes n'ont jamais utilisé un couteau de façon offensive. It's more to improve your understanding of defensive capacities. Parce que dans mon opinion, c'est pas vraiment une bonne idée de faire des contrôles les petites jointures contre un arme ou contre les mains nues pour cette raison. Alors, so a lot of people try to do like small joint control. It's very, very hard to do. I believe in doing large joint control, getting the trunk, getting the guy down, and controlling the limbs and the hands later. But to really reinforce the point, we're going to show you all the things you can do when somebody's grabbing you and you have a knife. Alors, on va faire seulement une étape sans couteau. We're just doing one step without a knife, which is just basic wrist grab escape. So, in a lot of styles, dans plusieurs styles, quand vous êtes dans un prise de poignet, ils enseignent une rotation avec le radius. They reinforce this notion of rotating the radial bone, the thumb edge, vers cette ouverture, même si le main est capable de croiser. So even if the hand's able to overlap, if it was a huge person, I'll do on this side just to show, they advocate turning the thumb here and then ripping out, right? Puis il va déchirer, ou il va utiliser le deuxième main pour sa part. Puis ça peut marcher, right? It can work with one hand or with two. Mais le problème à un niveau biomécanique, if we talk about biomechanics, on a toute cette longueur de levier. We have all that length of lever. Le point de connexion, l'attachement, ça c'est ton fulcrum, ton pivot. Right? That's your pivot point, your fulcrum. Puis l'instant tu travailles avec le main, avec la section courte, tu perds tout cet avantage ici. So when I work here, it's equivalent to sort of having a shovel and using the head of the shovel rather than the handle. I'm not using all that wonderful lever that I have. Alors en place de déchirer, qui peut marcher, on veut garder le point de contact fixed. Right? So first thing we want to do is kind of make a little contraction so this becomes less mobile. And instead of pulling up via the bicep, I want to push down with the elbow. Idéalement, je veux garder toute cette longueur active, right? I want to keep all my length active, puis je vais garder le point de connexion si statique que possible. I want to avoid moving this, parce qu'après, Si on a un couteau, par exemple, we have a knife, this kind of motion becomes very, very dangerous. Right? I parle de juste l'efficacité. This might be a mechanical point. It might be an argument in philosophy. But if I've got a knife or even a longer knife and I start ripping out like this, or he's pulling with two hands, and the only thing I have is a countermeasure with the second or a hand switch, I deprive myself of the ability to keep that fixed, right? Garde ça fixe, puis travaille avec le côté là. Right? So I should be using, as much as possible, the long portion, as if I'm going elbow to elbow, or if I was lower, elbow to elbow, or if I was here, elbow to body, and then in. Right, so I want to try to use all that length. He should squeeze as hard as he can. Il va compresser si fort que possible. Puis si tu viens confortable, fais-le avec deux mains. So it's true, there are plenty of escapes where I can use my second hand to rip up, but if this second hand is not available, I want to see that I can twist out. So we're going to go back and forth as hard as you can. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. On va faire haute répétition. We're doing high repetitions with small isolations. On va faire des limitations spécifiques. Pour la première étape, first step, maintenant, avec le couteau dans ton main, dans une position pic à glace. We're going to start off with ice pick. Le raison, the reason we're starting off with ice pick, it's not because it's better. C'est mon préférence, but it's not because it's better. I prefer it. It's because it's easier on your eyes if you mess up, right? Parce que souvent les personnes vont tirer. Puis si on a un couteau long, we do this, right? We swallow it. So all the same work's going to happen. We're going to be there. I want to fix like this, and this could be later on. You could be wrestling, doing whatever you want, but I want to think with the wholeness of my body. Alors, pour améliorer le travail maintenant, I want to make it better. I don't want to just say, okay, got to move the long lever, and then lose my base like this. Vérifier que si c'est loin, if he's pulling and he's trying to wrestle it, I want to see how I can get it to a position of strength for me. Je vais garder ça fixe dans un domaine de confort. I don't want to fix it out here because I can't do much here. I would like to, if he's pulling and yanking and pulling, I just want to come into a zone where I'm comfortable. Alors même quand c'est léger, even when it's light, he grabs, I should right away adjust myself to a position where it's close to me. Second thing I should do is I shouldn't just work from the long portion of the lever, from the arm itself. I should work from the body. So all of me is working. Everything is working. And then I see that as I move out, you'll see an open space. Here, for example, all of me is working. And then I'm ready to come back. Be careful on the recoil. You're going to get out and you're going to go, you're going to want to come back, but he's going to be falling. Il ne va jamais tomber de la même façon deux fois en ligne. He's never going to be the same, right? So sometimes, for example, if I put a little density up like that, and then I work down like that, it's going to come up very, very fast. So he might fall into it if I go back hard. The second time, he may not be where he was the first time. Alors, chaque fois, il va tomber dans un sens différent. Alors, tu ne veux jamais continuer avec un grand frappe après. Just keep it tight. That's it. Back and forth. You can do it a few times, switch, a few times, switch. Enjoy. We're there for a while. Pick a glass, ice pick. Tip down. Deuxième étape, même travail maintenant, pick à glace, position orthodox, so it's going to be orthodox. So when he grips now, depending on your length, there's increasing danger to you. C'est certain dans un vrai contexte. In a real context, on va travailler beaucoup avec le lame aussi. We're going to use the blade a lot, but we're going to limit ourselves for now. Pour la première période, on va pas utiliser le couteau. Ça va être la prochaine étape. It's going to be the second step. What I want to see first is that nothing really changes. When I have this kind of a grip, my hand tends to be a little bit stronger in most cases, right? Most people tend to hold ice pick stronger than orthodox, right? Because the reality is, it's the bottom fingers that should be your primary grippers. C'est toujours les trois doigts en dessous qui sont essentiels dans le prise. So if you grab just naturally and you think with aggression in your ice pick, most people close their fist tightly like this. But as soon as we go orthodox, you're going to see a lot of people start to get pointy. Plusieurs personnes, ils vont pointer le couteau. They start to adapt. Some people even teach all sorts of weirdness, putting the handle like this. And again, you only want to take the pointy end and put it into a person. If your life is on the line, c'est si agressif que possible. This, I mean, would you put your life on the line against the biggest, scariest biker in the world? You'd have it, prison style, right? So I just want to hold it well, and I don't want to get too specific in my grip. If ice pick was comfortable and solid, the only variation on ice pick is this or this. And to a certain extent, it depends on the knife, right? Certains couteaux, il y a des choses ici, des pics ou des anneaux, c'est pas si confortable. Sometimes it's not comfortable. Other times we have choice. But here, there's no choice. Squeeze with the bottom, not with the top, right? On va jamais tirer là. Puis des fois, si le couteau, il n'y a pas un bon garde, if it doesn't have a really good guard, and it's very sharp, sometimes we get afraid, and when we're not used to it, you see people, whenever they want to test a sharp knife, they always hold it like this, when they're not used to it, right? Like this, because it's how we cut in the kitchen. Use the bottom. These are the most overlapping your hand. That's the bed that you need. The index finger is your direction. You try not to pinky out like that. So all the same stuff. What happens is, if I have a bad grip and I start to work from the elbow, my hand gets weak, and you'll see people dropping the knife more in orthodox. That's the first thing, right? Il va perdu le couteau parce que le prise est pas bon. Alors, contracte en bas. Puis quand tu contractes, ça va te donner ton densité. At the same time I contract, that gives you the density in that grip. And then as I work now, I just want to, if I need to, I keep my second hand back, je peux garder le deuxième main proche. Parce qu'après, on va utiliser les deux ensemble. After, we're going to actually use both of it together when they're available. So there's nothing wrong with having it here, just don't reach for the blade. And so I'm working with the elbow as much as I can, and then I'm ready to come back. Make sense? Back and forth every few. Enjoy this. This is a cold steel folder, and it's a perfect example of a knife that will inspire a lot of fear in certain people's grips. It's fluted on a constant taper. It's extremely sharp, so when you grab it, there's really nothing here. This little thumb notch is about it. There's not much to stop, and if you do stab with this knife and you top grip, and we've seen this in live cutting classes, you will slide up and cut yourself. So it's really essential in a knife like this that you get a really firm bottom grip, and that those three fingers are being supported by that thumb notch right here. This is primarily meant for cutting, but it does have a really nice stabbing tip, but the handle itself is a good example of a perfect knife for inspiring excessive top contraction out of fear, which will only actually worsen the case. If I take something that's intended only for stabbing, like a Sykes-Fairbairn style dagger, this is a Spartan blade, usually you'll have some kind of minimal guard because that's really intended to serve as a stopper. So here again, a lot of people will put all their reliance in their thumb and their index finger, and then when they stab, and you'll even see them developing huge calluses here and here when they do prolonged cutting. So on a commando style knife like that, it's really important your bottom fingers are nice and tight so that you get under the bulb of the weapon like that, and that you have really good piercing. Ice pick, there's no worries because you have your choice whether on top or on the bottom, but it's really, in these kinds of grips, you'll see people start to get very fine motor in their pinky, and that's very prone to disarm by faulty grip. So the first rule to retention is grip it well. Bottom finger's nice and tight on this under the bulb, mid finger goes on that flat in here, and these are assisting, but they're not in any way the dominant force in keeping it in your hand. So just a few little technical pointers that will save you a lot of sort of trouble and heartache down the line. Okay guys, on va même pas couper encore. We're still not going to cut the person yet, because sometimes you may have a knife out, somebody may go on it, and you may not necessarily, just because the knife is out, you may not necessarily want to use it. That's number one. If we're talking offensively, it might be the wrong case. It could be somebody misidentifying you as the bad guy, jumping on you. Il y a personne qui pense que vous êtes le criminel, l'agresseur, mais en réalité vous êtes le défendeur. Lots of things can happen. Plus, we also want to understand the most somebody can do to keep that weapon so we can better counter it if we're trying to disarm them. So, c'est ton choix, si c'est orthodox ou pick à glace, right? So now I can do orthodox or ice pick, I can change at any point. So aside from fixing my fulcrum, I have one or two, doesn't matter. Aside from fixing the fulcrum and working with the long lever, right? On peut garder le point de contact fixe dans l'espace, on peut travailler avec le levier long, mais un autre principe très important, on veut jamais garder le lame dans le vide. I never want to let a blade be in the void. If I was working against Darren, I was trying to disarm him, I want to pin it, right? Je veux coller le couteau sur quelque chose, on something, a wall, object, car seat, table, door frame. Sur lui, if I had a choice between here and being on him, I'd rather it be on him. Idéalement, dans un espace où c'est dangereux pour lui, right? Get it on the arteries, near the groin, someplace that's going to intimidate or injure. Ou si tu n'as aucun choix, sur toi. If I have to pin it, rather than have it here, I'd rather have it stuck. And on me, I'd rather have it stuck on places that are not vulnerable, comme l'extérieur de ton cuisse, ton fesse. Butt and hip bone is a good place, because I'll have better control. So if it's me with the blade and he's trying to fight, he's going to try to do everything he can to get it close to him, right? Usually he's going to try to have good control, because here he is good. If he pins it on me, it's all right, right? If he's super good, but it allows me to rotate quite easily, parce que j'avais un espace pour le levier. Alors, si quelqu'un il va lutter, if he's wrestling, put it just in the void at first, electric squeezing, if I can't move it at all, I may not be able to put it towards him. Peut-être je peux pas avancer vers lui. I also can't pull it towards me, but I can always pull me towards it. Right? Je peux toujours avancer. And so here I'll put it on a place that's not dangerous for me, like the outside of my hip, samurai style. And then from this position, I'll be in a better place to start working against him. Right? So in any case, he would love to have me, if two security officers are trying to take a knife off of me, they want to spread me out, right? Deux agents ou police, par exemple, tu veux séparer quelqu'un. The worst nightmare they can have is if the guy manages to get it in tight to him, because this is very hard for him to get disarmed, and now he has a lot of cutting capacity. Alors au minimum maintenant, voir si vous êtes capable de rentrer, get yourself into it, and then without cutting yourself, I want to start working with the long lever. On peut utiliser le deuxième main aussi, right? One of the easiest ways to keep that fixed in space is to grab it. So now this does not move anywhere, so when I move, I have full access after. Does that make sense? So if it was ice pick, nothing would change. He grabs, he's finally, let's imagine worst case scenario. He gets you like that, he's got two hands, he's gonna move it everywhere, it's dangerous for my shoulder. As soon as I fix it and pull myself into it, now I have tremendous power to come out and get back, right? So number one, bring yourself close and all together. Don't let yourself be spread out. Number two, at any point you can grab him, keep him in space and work with your whole body. Yeah, got it? To this end, guys, here is a fantastic solo training drill for this. Take your blade of choice, and all you're going to do is imagine it's in the void and it's being controlled by someone. So I'm going to contract it in space, but I want to contract it like a spiral. So instead of just constipating all the muscles and forcing everything, I want to kind of think almost as if I'm giving a small 3/4 inch punch, like an old-timey bare knuckle boxer. Smallest rotation, almost like I'm grabbing a steering wheel. Like that. And by doing this, I'll progressively engage the arm more fully like a spiral. It's like I'm braiding the arm. Sometimes when I just contract on the spot, I contract with the familiar muscle groups, and whatever's most dominant, let's say our bicep or a radial muscle, might do most of the contracting, but we might leave a lot of our arm unengaged. When I contract in a spiral, we're more likely to recruit the fullness of the forearm, the fullness of the deltoid. So first thing I do is I practice retracting and contracting like a wave. I can even work progressively contracting shoulder, shoulder to bicep, shoulder bicep to forearm, and then finally at the end, making it to the hand. Or I can do inverse, hand first, and then hand to forearm, hand, forearm, bicep, and then finally the shoulder. So I learned to do it like a wave. Once I have that contracted in that wave-like spiral capacity, then I practice moving myself around the blade like a dance partner. As if somebody was wrestling that and they're trying to move it towards me or away from me. I contract in that wave and I move myself and bring myself into a position of greater comfort. So a really easy solo drill to do, but you can get thousands of these reps in quite easily. It teaches you safe zones of movement with a sharp blade, and it's fantastic for maximizing your retention skills. Exactly the same concept, but now we're going to countercut with the knife. So, juste pour exagération, maintenant je vais garder le couteau dans une mauvaise façon. I'm going to keep the knife in the weakest grip possible, not because I want you to, just because I want to exaggerate. So let's say he's grabbing my wrist, right? If I go to move, we know that that's the shortest part of the lever, right? Juste comme les personnes veulent lutter avec leurs mains pour esquiver une prise de poignet, right? People will try to wrestle with the wrist and twist to get out. You see them working like this. L'instant on a un couteau, le danger c'est plus haut, right? The danger to myself is higher, but the danger, the temptation to try to think tricky with the knife is even higher. People will not move, they try to do all this stuff, and then he's busy smacking your head into the wall and doing whatever else. So all of me is a lever, right? Quand c'est Orthodox, c'est simple. When it's Orthodox, it's very easy to see because all of it is in a straight line. But even if I'm in ice pick, all of this is a lever, right? So this is just a continuation. My fist is wide, that's all. All of me is a lever. Don't get in this position and then try to only work with the tip of the blade. You see people relinquishing their grip, doing weak stuff like this because they think magically they're going to end the fight by giving him a shaving wound on his forearm hair. Oh, he's done now! People get cut, they lose fingers, they keep fighting, they keep hitting with the wound, it doesn't stop them, right? Alors juste un petit coup comme ça, ça va pas arrêter le combat. It's not going to stop the fight. So I never want to cut at the expense of a good grip. I want that grip nice and tight. Alors imagine, c'est toute une longueur. Cette section, c'est encore beaucoup plus courte que ça. Even if I had a machete, this would still be shorter than all of me, right? So I want to fix that wrist, and I want to work with my body to get into a position where I can cut with confidence and gusto. I don't want a little cut. I want to be in a cut where whoosh, I can cut strongly. And if it's ice pick, same thing. The temptation now is everybody wants to be clever in their hooks. Strength of the lever so that this gets into a zone where it can cut quite easily. And when I do go for a hook, even if it's not sharp, même si c'est pas abusé sur les deux côtés, on veut toujours trianguler le bout vers le hood. Imagine it's dull here, but even if it's dull, I can still grip well, right, like that, and cause good torque, good pain to pull it off and open up for cuts. Make sense? So never, never, never fine motor with your fingers. Always nice and strong. Move with the wholeness of the body. C'est tout ton corps, tout ton levier long pour arriver dans une position idéale pour couper. You want to use the weapon to its fullest, not sacrifice your grip. Yep, that's it. Cut with care. So, we're going to start working slowly. Commence légèrement parce que c'est juste un cas de familiarité. It's just a case of becoming familiar. But the number one thing someone's going to do for a disarm is compression. Right? Idéalement, quand tu fais une compression, if you grab the weapon, for example, guys, you grab the weapon, what I'm trying to do, two basic principles. One, quand la personne il va contracter, il va résister. When he resists, tous les muscles vont contracter, puis le poignet ça va devenir plus compressé. It's going to be more compressed. Muscles get short when they contract. So if I push, am I fighting compression? Est-ce que c'est un mouvement contre compression ou est-ce que ça va aider compression? Does that help compression? Yeah, if I push, it makes him kind of stronger, right? So I never want to push. So when I'm there, I want to always jerk a little bit so it gets a bit weaker. I want to pull that out like that. It's going to make it quite a bit weaker. Even if I'm going to hit, let's say somebody's strong, you'll see sometimes people hit, good nerve area, strong, and then they, like this, it works a little bit, but the wrist is quite resistant. I barely need to hit, and I can pull, and he just forgets that it's getting looser, right? You don't notice it as much, either direction. Because when I pull, this opens up a little bit. If he's very resistant, and I have a second hand here and I pull, now you can feel the joint clicking open. So that becomes much easier. So first, whenever I grip, try not to compress. Even in a bicycle grip, try to elongate. Like the worst osteopath in the world. Lift up the neck, rotate. Sorry about the adjustment to your lifestyle. Driving with my hands. Number two, I never want to make large circular motions if I can avoid it. Because one, this gives him an easier path to escape. Right? Parce que l'affectation sur le jointure, ça veut être si direct que possible. If I talk about affecting the joint, it's like hinges on a door. You take your car door and you open it 180 degrees the wrong way, right? Ton porte sur la voiture, si tu ouvres complètement dans le mauvais sens, tu vas blesser toutes les pentures, les hinges, right? You're going to bend them backwards. Si tu prends la porte, if I take the door and I try to twist it or lift up and in, you might weaken it a bit, but it's the longest route, right? Take any door, open it past its capacity. Completely the wrong way, that's how you destroy the hinges. Same thing here, I want to take it straight past its capacity. Right to the elbow to make a triangle. Alors c'est comme un triangle. Ligne du base, un angle de 90 degrés, 90 degree angle. Puis c'est un gaspillage de pousser sur les doigts parce que c'est flexible. It's just leakage and flexibility. So I want to take the furthest extent of the firm lever, which is the knuckle, and the knuckles go to the elbow. That's what I'm looking to do. Anything I do beyond that, compression, big circle, makes it easier for him as I move to just kind of twist up and to do things. So what we're going to do now, before that for a second, if he's got me, at first you can begin forcing ineffectively. You can push into me, right? And you see that when you're trying to bend me, it's the same principle. How did I get out of the hold? I use the length of my lever. How do I change the relationship if I'm still in the hold? I use the length of my lever. If he starts to compress me, do you think it's going to be more effective to fight with this little short lever? Or do you think it's going to be more effective to move the long lever? Long lever, right? So get into a position of pain and try fungula escape. It doesn't work, yeah? But if I go like this, it's done, right? So anytime you're compressed or he's trying to disarm it like this, see how you can get the length of you back and then work with the wholeness of the body. Right? So it becomes an age. So this way, I don't wait after a while to get compressed and then say, how can I get long? So many jokes there. I start as soon as I feel it going out of alignment. He starts to go. I correct with the length. Make sense? And I'm barely forcing, right? And there's not a lot of resistance. Keep bending. And I see from that position how I can keep my wrist straight. Notice my grip is always the same. Right? If I was here, nothing would change. Bottom grip, he goes to bend. So I'm not using a tremendous amount of muscle. It's not, look, bicep is soft. I'm just keeping myself in alignment. And again, at any point, si jamais ça vient trop, if I'm really bent up and I need to get this back straight and I can't move my elbow enough, I can make space with my second hand. N'importe où, right? I go into an eye, I go into a trachea, I give a punch, right? So look, imagine he's got a crank, like for example, like a gooseneck. You're cranked like that, he's just about to disarm. Anything here is gonna let me come back to form. So I make more space. But I start slowly, so as soon as you feel, watch, as soon as you feel that's starting to bend, you straight, exactly. So be careful, because a lot of guys, when I start to force, relax for a second, I start to force, the first place they lose the grip is the pinkies, and the first place they resist is the knuckles. But in effect, when I imagine, relax for a second, keep that strong in the pinkies. If I had you bent like this, the first place I should move is the elbow to return to alignment. And then I should flick from the pinkies. And that's way stronger than if you would resist from the knuckles. That's going to be a wasted effort. And if I'm going fast, in the time you go against me, you're actually going to help me tear your muscle. So go as slowly as you can. You can start in full compression. and then let him sort it out with the length of the lever. Return to good form with everything that's left. It would be the same as if he was breaking my finger, right? I would not try to resist with my finger. I would correct my form with the rest of me and then boom, and use all the way to get out. Logic up here? Yeah? All right, let's go. Guys, un dernier principe, one last principle. So, si tu penses, tu lèves le couteau, puis tu penses, il y a un danger, tu peux perdre le couteau. Right? Let's say I pull it out, and the other person's really skilled looking, they're really big, vous êtes dans un endroit très restreint, or you're starting to get funneled down, and they're able to have their hands we're in a tunnel or a hallway, and it's easy for them to kind of get close. Où l'instant, il y a 2-3 personnes, there's 2-3 people, you have a weapon. Right away, in those scenarios, you should avoid working far and long. Si tu veux garder ton couteau, on veut éviter des rallongements. Because he wants to have me stretched out and twisted, and I want to be nice and close so I can make space and work. On peut toujours travailler ici, right? If he pins it on me, I can still work from my hip and get good stabs from the body, even with a short knife. But when he's got me at arm's reach, or really all tied up, like there's not a lot you can do, and he can really hurt you. And now you're fighting to save your arm. On doit protéger le bras en premier, puis après peut-être tu peux attaquer avec le couteau. So as soon as I see somebody's getting in close, however I have it, a good rule of thumb is to bring it in tight. It's up to you how you want to use it. Some people do like using it Orthodox with a compound grip like this. My suggestion is switch to ice pick. Ice pick at close range is much more powerful for shredding. I find it's got good hooking capacity. You have good, so back hook, front cut, and good stab. Puis c'est très simple parce que le lame c'est sur l'autre côté. Je peux connecter les mains ici. It becomes like a triangle. So as soon, if I was like this, I was working. Oh, now I see Luba's friend has arrived up. Right away, I would switch to ice pick, and I would keep my hands together. Now I work kind of like a wave. So even if he manages to get all of his body on me, now it's easier for me together to work and get a lot of power. Right? C'est la même chose si jamais vous êtes dans un corridor where I have to start opening doors and stuff. A lot of people start to work like this, and I would rather, if it's just soft obstacles, the door is just not closed. Si c'est une porte ouverte, mais pas complètement, je vais utiliser le coude. If I'm going through branches, I'd rather use my hands as close to my body as possible. If I was going through people to get to somebody else, it would be the same thing. I try to avoid swimming with my arms out because that's where it's easier for someone to surprise you and catch you. So in your house, for example, you had your kitchen knife and you're checking for a burglar. I try to avoid the Elmer Fudd like this. I want to keep it nice and tight. Because whatever's going to happen, I'm going to work. And if I do separate, it's going to only be after I engage. But I'm going to try to avoid that getting pulled away from me. So a very simple drill, you have it. And if you see he's getting close, we're just going to compound. So at any point I can snap it and cut with a bait. I can give this as a finger whip or something. Right? C'est juste une distraction. And then I can cut from here. Ou sinon, je peux travailler ici. Puis s'il veut faire contact, je vais commencer immédiatement. Parce que les deux bras sont plus forts. Especially if you're small, like a woman or a smaller person. Right away, this gives you a lot of sort of thrusting and cutting capacity. You rip with a lot more power. Food for thought. Play with it. See you later. Okay, guys, one last skill we've covered elsewhere in other video material, but you might require it here because I did just use it. One of the many ways that we have to switch a blade is a body switch or a switch on the body. This is what I do. If I have my knife in an Orthodox grip, I don't want to get the tip into me, so I'm going to surpass my body, and I'm going to put the flat of the blade on my body. And I don't want to drag in a way where the blades could cut me. I want to go past with the tip, press the flat, ideally on a durable surface like the outside of the butt of the thigh, and then from this surface, I'm just going to fold over. I'm going to switch my grip. To go from ice pick to Orthodox would be the same thing. I don't want to spike myself with the tip, so I go past with the flat, and I switch here. And that's over trying to do something fine motor like this, because sometimes under conditions of stress, my fine motor skill is not there and I lose it. It falls out of my hand. I might even try to grab it as it goes down. So what I'm doing is I'm using my body to inform my body awareness, my spatial awareness. And so again, it's tip. Don't start this with a live blade like this. Start it with your trainer at first. But it's a very simple body switch. We do this on a lot of our other knife material that you can see on Combat Professor, but I just include it here for extra content so when you see me doing it, it doesn't look like wizardry. That's the knife body switch.